Hello, and we're going to look at The Woman in Black, which appears in the AQA GCSE English Literature Exam Unit 1 Exploring Modern Texts. In this talk, we're going to go through the whole book, really. It's going to be quite long and quite detailed, but just a warning that it's not everything you're going to find out about the book. And you must also use the notes you have made at school, the notes you might have picked up from other books and critics that you've read, and your own reading and understanding of this book. Okay, well, starting with the way it's written. The story actually is a mixture of two genres, the Gothic and the ghost story genre. The Gothic comes from the 1700s and focuses on old castles, hauntings by ghosts such as monks and nuns, strange family curses, dungeons, very gloomy settings like forests and so on, and isolated places like islands. The ghost story genre really comes out of the 19th century, and it looks more at the idea of the deaths of children, the revelation of family secrets, and unlike the Gothic genre, it often puts forward the idea of a positive ending or resolution. The Gothic genre often ends in complete tragedy and destruction, whereas the 19th century ghost story works towards some sort of resolution and even maybe a redemption for the characters involved. Hill uses both of these genres to create her atmosphere, her characters and the settings. She uses the dramatic nature of these genres to create tension throughout the whole of the book, and she uses a range of devices from her innocent and sometimes ignorant narrator, Arthur Kipps, foreshadowing devices, delaying action, often through dramatic situations such as Arthur losing his torch and it becoming dark, the building of sounds and their effects on the character's mind, and sometimes contrasts. So where, for example, at the end of the story, it seems to be a happy day and things seem to be going well, the reader is then suddenly hit with tragic events. Moving on, we can look at the settings. The role of place in the story is very strong, and each place has a significance. Something we'll find out a bit later when we talk about symbols and place names. But I just want to quickly run through these ones with you. At the beginning, we're in the present of the novel, and Monk's Peace is a bit of a pun. A monk is a person who basically lives on their own and is isolated and has to suffer all those things. And Arthur Kipps is a bit like this at the beginning of the novel. We don't realise why he's on his own. We find that out at the end, strangely. But what we have here is somebody who's on their own finding peace. But this is a pun, of course. Peace means a part of here, but it actually is the P-E-A-C-E, peace, that meaning calm, tranquility, self-contentment, happiness. So Monk's Peace is a place of happiness for Arthur Kipps. London, on the other hand, is a place of mystery, and it's actually where the mystery begins. And I don't want to talk too much about really the symbols in the novel and the use of metaphors, but London is a place of mystery, and we'll find out why a bit later. Cry Thin Gifford, you can see the word cry and thin are actually there already, so it's another pun. It's all really about the nature of the stark, harsh, cold, thin world up in that part of the world, and the fact that it's sad as well. The other settings, such as the graveyards, there are two graveyard settings in this book, and both play a Gothic role, and also the Woman in Black appears in both of them. There's the graveyard in Cry Thin Gifford, and there's also the graveyard at Yale Marsh house, both very Gothic. The first one can be contrasted quite interestingly with the second one, because the first one, Arthur doesn't realise anything bad, strange or supernatural is happening to him. However, by the time he's on his own by Yale Marsh house and he sees the family graveyard of the Drablows, it's a different matter completely. The Causeway too, its setting is a place of unhappiness, and again linking to London with its mists and mystery and strange noises and sounds, it actually deepens the feeling of isolation and unhappiness for Arthur. The ruins at Eel Marsh House, again, This is a Gothic element that Arthur explores and starts to realise that where he is isn't as romantic as he thinks it is, and it's full of strange animals. And of course, not very long after this, he sees the woman in black. And finally, Marsh House itself, which holds all of the secrets of the Drablows and the secret of the woman in black and the dead child of Jeanette Humphrey. So place and setting is incredibly important, and Susan Hill uses these settings to create the atmosphere and to engage the reader in her Gothic stroke ghost story. Central to the story is the narrator Arthur Kipps, and it's through his voice and his very reliable narration that we learn about the horrific events that surround the woman in black and his trip to Crithing Gifford. Susan Hill uses Arthur Kipps's misreading of situations to create dramatic irony, suspense and foreshadowing in the novel. Through his misunderstandings, we learn much about the mystery in the book. An example of this is when he talks to Mr. Jerome at Mrs. Drablow's funeral, and we can see quite clearly that the woman in black has only been seen by Arthur Kipps, and Mr. Jerome understands the significance of her appearance much more than he does. The structure of the book follows Arthur Kipps's narrative, starting off in the present for Arthur Kipps, which is sometime around the 1930s, and then through recount moves backwards in time to when Arthur is in his 20s in the early 1900s, somewhere between 1900 and 1914, just before the First World War. This structure then moves forward in time to where he's actually decided to write the story of the woman in black and the tragic events of his life. Within the story, the symbols are very much linked to the Gothic and ghost story genre. So there is the use of fog. This is symbolic in the sense that it signifies mystery, and it's the mystery at the beginning of the story of Mrs. Drablow that engages Arthur Kipps in his deadly relationship with the Drablow estate and the curse that is with it. As said before, the place names symbolise emotions and a range of events both in the past and present in relation to Kipps's experiences. The Causeway, for example, which is called the 9 Lives Causeway, suggesting the idea of a cat and that some things died there before already and still lives on. The Pony and Trap, which not only is about the death of Jeanette Humphrey's son, but also is a symbol that links both Jeanette Humphrey as the woman in black with Kipps's own experience, but we only find out the significance of it right at the end of the novel. So here what Susan Hill is doing is she's using a unifying device that appears in different parts of the novel to link characters together and to link the story structure together. And of course, finally, the idea of the colour black, here using its traditional sense of mystery, treachery, death, mourning. That is the idea of really feeling sorrowful about the loss of somebody, the idea of darkness, the darkness of Jeanette's feelings, the darkness of the wish of the woman in black to get revenge on everybody who hasn't suffered her fate, the idea of night when a lot of these negative and scary events happen, the idea of fear and being masked in fear, and of course, one of the actual themes of the book, which we only really come to understand at the end, is the idea of evil in the world and how evil is released through negative emotions and an inability to forgive.